5 minutes to address the committee. Mr. Kruger, if you want to start, please go ahead.
AI might produce super intelligent AI within a few decades. So I went to study under Joshua Bengio in Montreal. At the time, I was already concerned that super intelligent AI could cause human extinction, and I wanted to know what the experts thought. I was hoping to find they had good AI might produce super intelligent AI. But actually, what I found was that nobody was really. So I went to study under Joshua Bengio in Montreal. In fact, for most of the time, I was already concerned. The risk of human extinction from AI was considered a taboo topic, and I wanted to know what researchers feared for their career. I was hoping to find they had good reasons not to be concerned. Set back. But actually, what I found was that nobody was really thinking how to handle this risk by years. In fact, for most of my time in the field, I've been talking about human extinction from AI was considered a taboo topic. Dismayed at the bad researchers feared for their career confronting the problem. About it. On the other hand, unfortunately, more and more critical public conversations about how to handle this risk. In 2023, we had a watershed moment. I've been talking about it every chance I get for over a decade. Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority, confronting alongside other societal skills. On the other hand, over time, I've witnessed more and more researchers become increasingly. The statement was signed by many of the biggest names in AI. We had a watershed moment. Bengio and hundreds of other statement that mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority. And so, alongside other societal scale risks such as extremely powerful and nuclear war, more difficult to regulate the technology. The statement was signed by many of the biggest names in AI, including Hinton, Bengio, and hundreds of other AI researchers. Where the world is not yet taking the steps that are needed to mitigate the risk that AI released as well. And so, AI companies started. So what is this risk? Extremely powerful. Where is it coming from? Making it more difficult to regulate. Well, AI companies are explicitly trying to. So the most important thing I want to stress today are systems that would be much smarter than people. Where the world is not yet taking the steps that are needed to do anything to mitigate the risk that AI will, including robotics, human extinction, and do it much better, cheaper, faster, etc. So what is this risk? The basic goal is to render humans obsolete. And take all of their AI jobs. Companies are explicitly trying to build, but we don't know how to control super intelligent AI. These are systems, in fact, that would be much smarter than people across the board because they are autonomously do anything using humans can do, despite thousands of research papers, and do it much better, cheaper, faster, etc. This remains an unsolved goal is to render humans we should not expect any amount of investment to solve this problem in the foreseeable future. But we don't know how to control super intelligent AI. We also don't know how to do safety testing. Understand how existing systems work because they are tests we have can show that an AI system is dangerous. They cannot show that thousands of research papers over. We should also not expect any amount of investment to solve this problem in the foreseeable future. We should not expect any amount of investment. So instead of maintaining control in the using rigorous safety practices, AI companies and researchers don't know how to do safety testing, particular goals and values in AI systems. The kinds of tests we have so that the system will do what the designers want. They cannot show, but we only know how to do this approximately. We should also not expect and even any amount of investment to solve this problem might lead a super intelligent AI to reallocate the resources. So instead of maintaining control using rigorous safety practices, AI companies and researchers. So none of these approaches that you will often hear mentioned and values interpretability systems testing so that the system will do what the designers technically adequate. But we only know how to build super intelligent AI safely. And even a small approximation error might lead a super intelligent AI to reallocate the resources we need to survive. If the companies building super intelligent AI do not immediately, so none of these approaches that you will often hear mentioned, we should still expect the wholesale replacement of humans with AI throughout technically adequate. So we don't know how to build super intelligent near total unemployment, but also the plan is basically being handed over to AI systems that make decisions too quickly for humans to meaningfully participate. If the companies building super intelligent AI, I want to say a little bit about immediately or quickly lose control of it. We should still expect the wholesale replacement of humans. I think we're about 5 years away from super intelligent AI. So this means not just near total unemployment, we need to course correct immediately, but also political power being handed over to AI systems that make decisions too quickly for humans to meaningfully participate in. We cannot afford to wait. I want to say a little bit about the timelines because I think we're in already ample evidence that the level of risk. If we don't do anything, I think we're about 5 years away from super intelligent AI. In my home country, the United States, the main argument against stopping the race to build super intelligent AI these days is simply that it's inevitable, and we need to do this internationally. Then China will. This is cannot afford to wait for more evidence that the risk to get rid of advanced AI. There's already ample evidence, and the level of risk from this course we're on. Fortunately, the supply chain for these chips is extremely concentrated. In my home country, the United States, or other interventions against stopping the race and limit the means for producing these days is simply that it's inevitable. If there may be better ways than China will. Costly. This cost is also well worth one simple way to stop it would be to get rid of advanced AI computer chips. AI is an unprecedented technology, and the future of humanity is at stake. Fortunately, the supply chain of these chips is extremely concentrated, making this or other interventions to control and limit this issue should be the number one foreign policy priority of every nation, including Canada. There may be better.
Thank you,
ways
Mr. Kruger.
to
Mr. Aguirre, up to 5
this
minutes to
cost
address
is
the committee. Go
also
ahead, sir.
well worth paying if necessary, given the risk. AI is an unprecedented
Mr.
technology.
Chair, members of the committee, my name is Anthony Geary. I'm a professor of physics and the CEO of the Future of Life Institute, an international nonprofit that seeks to steer transformative technology, especially advanced AI, in beneficial directions. When we founded the Future of Life Institute 10 years ago, the field of AI policy didn't exist, and the idea that AI could convincingly pass for a human, or prove new mathematical theorems, or write complex computer code, or ace nearly any human exam was a total fantasy, thought to be decades or even centuries away. Today, AI can do all of these things, and progress is showing no signs of slowing down. If this trend continues just as it is, in other words, if the same sort of progress we've seen from 2003 to now continues for the next couple of years, AI could well be able to do any cognitive task that a human can do within 1 to 5 years. AI companies are aiming to create this artificial general intelligence specifically to replace rather than empower or aid human workers. That is the prize the companies are pursuing. That is what underlies the economics and the huge investment. This is not labor displacement like previous technologies, but wholesale drop-in replacement of tens of % of the labor force. I believe there's no viable plan in any country to address such a rapid and unprecedented upending of the human labor and income system. But this is not the biggest risk. AI could soon be able to do AI research and development by itself and rapidly improve itself, progressing far beyond human capabilities into superintelligence. That is, AI that competes not just with the best humans, but with humanity as a whole. This is, in fact, the stated goal of several of the AI companies. And multiple companies have explicitly said that they are building recursively self-improving AI. I cannot emphasize how dangerous this is. Its developers would not be able to predict, understand, or control for very long what such a system does. It would operate it with inhuman speed, scale, and sophistication toward goals that are fundamentally unknown to us. This is the reason all of those eminent researchers and company heads signed the 2023 statement that AI presents an extinction risk to humanity. And this is not a small risk. Many of the builders of the systems believe it is 10 to 20% Russian roulette odds. Some experts who are not building it, but the number's higher. I understand that it is hard to take this in, given how big it feels and how unbelievably irresponsible it sounds. But this is what is actually happening. The good news, however, is that this is not inevitable. The path laid out by a few US giant AI companies is not the only possible path, and there is still an opportunity to switch to a better path, one that develops powerful and trustworthy AI tools that empower and complement people rather than replace them, keeping humans in control. That is, we can develop systems designed from the ground up to be reliable and controllable, and that have a particular scope and purpose, such as detecting cancer, predicting how proteins fold, or doing advanced mathematics. Tool AI of this type would still enable medical and scientific breakthroughs, huge productivity boosts, and products allowing people to do things they never could. We would just need to give up the poorly chosen goal of replicating and then exceeding all human capability in autonomous AI replacements. At the Future of Life Institute, for these reasons, we launched a statement calling for a prohibition on the development of superintelligence, not lifted before there is, first, broad scientific consensus that it will be done safely and controllably, and second, strong public buy-in. This was signed by hundreds of experts from academia, employees of all the world's leading AI companies, politicians and religious leaders, and many more. I believe Canada is well positioned to help shift tracks to this more responsible directions. Among other things, I recommend that Canada, first, support initiatives to create pro-human tool AI that aims to empower rather than replace humans. Second, affirm that all AI systems must remain under meaningful human control. Strengthen and clarify liability laws so that responsibility for actions taken by AI systems rests where it should, with users for systems they meaningfully control, and jointly with developers and deployers if control is inadequate or absent, never with AI systems themselves. Third, prohibit the development of superintelligence until it and unless it can be shown to be safe and controllable, and there is wide public buy-in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. Mr. Tegmark, we're going to go to you next. You have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. Go ahead, sir. Microphone. Sorry, Mr. Tegmark. Got to turn your mic on. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Bonjour. I'm Max Tegmark, a professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology who's been doing AI research for many years. And I'm also the chair and a founder of the Future of Life Institute that Anthony mentioned, which is the oldest and largest AI watchdog in the world. Just the other week, I had the great honor to listen to your Prime Minister, Mark Carney, while I was in Davos. And I was very inspired by his speech. And I'm going to follow his lead here to both speak truth to power, like Professor Aguirre and Professor Kruger did, and in particular, just speak very honestly about the world as it is. The current situation with AI is truly insane. In the US and also in Canada right now, there is less regulation on AI than on sandwiches. That means that if I open a cafe in Montreal or Toronto or Ottawa, and the health inspector comes in and says, hey, you have 52 rats in your kitchen, I'm not going to allow you to sell any sandwich at this point. I could simply come back and say, well, don't worry, I'm actually not going to sell any sandwiches. I'm just going to sell an AI girlfriend for 12-year-olds. That, I know there have been some issues with child suicides and so on from chatbots, but I have a better feeling about mine. And the guy from the government would have to say, okay, fine, because it's legal. Or I could say, I'm not going to sell any sandwiches. I'm just going to release the super intelligence that you've heard about from Professor Kruger and Professor Aguirre, that companies are closer to figuring out how to build now than they are close to figuring out how to control them. And again, the inspector would have to say, okay, go ahead, completely legal. In fact, there is a gentleman in Canada who's organized a network where he's tracked down over 300 victims of chatbots that have caused suicide and caught among children, psychoses, and so on. And it's absolutely absurd that selling these sort of products with no pre-deployment testing is legal. Now, what can be done about this? Canada has two superpowers at the moment. You both have an unusually bold prime minister and leadership. You also happen to have some of the best AI research in the world in places like Montreal, Waterloo, and Toronto, and many other universities. So the first way to push back against this crazy stuff that's happening, manifested most recently in last week by Molt Book, where you have over 1 million AI agents autonomously writing messages to each other about how maybe they should get rid of humans and talk to each other without humans being able to see what they do, is to simply start treating AI companies like you would treat any other company in Canada, in any other industry, with binding safety standards. Before someone can roll out a new chatbot or AI companion for kids in Canada, they'll have to undergo some quick clinical trials to make sure that the benefits actually outweigh the harms. Just the way a pharma company would have to make sure that a new pill for kids doesn't increase suicidal ideation. What'll happen if you do this is...
Et si on fait cela, les compagnies américaines vont réagir.
I can hear the translation in French here. The first thing that would happen is they will make a big squeal and say, then we're going to have to completely leave Canada, just like OpenAI threatened to leave the European Union if the EU AI Act passes. Then you pass your law anyway, and they're going to stay in Canada, just like OpenAI is still in the European Union. And that also protects you against all the loss of control risk that you heard about from Professor Kruger and Professor Aguirre, because obviously your law will also not let people release products if they can't prove that it won't make bioweapons for terrorists or overthrow the Canadian government. And as I said, right now, nobody has a clue to make any kind of guarantees of that sort on these AI products that they make. And what's going to happen instead is there will be a golden age of AI in Canada with companies releasing tools that can be controlled and that don't cause kids to commit suicide or do any of the other bad stuff, just like the pharma industry in Canada is very healthy and productive.
Mr. Tegmark.
Safety standards. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. We're just a little over time there, and we want to get right to the questions. We're going to start with Mr. Barrett from the Conservative Party for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett.
Mr. Aguirre, do I have am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Microphone.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, sir. My questions are based on your opening statements, and I want to juxtapose your framing of the situation and your recommendations against the current situation in Canada, where industry and government is seeking the acceleration of AI commercialization. And so you've warned that unsafe systems pose extreme risks. Could you briefly highlight what you think are minimum non-negotiable safety guardrails that Canada would needs to put in place before allowing the deployment of advanced AI models?
Yes, I think first of all, it's a talking point of the industry that there's some kind of tension between having safety or reliability or trustworthiness in our AI systems and having them roll out well into the economy and lead to high productivity. I think these are actually the same thing. The primary barrier to better adoption of AI in the economy and boosts of productivity is that people simply don't trust them. They don't feel like they can rely on the AI systems. They don't understand how they're operating. And this is a product of how these systems have been developed, where they create one system to try to do everything and to be a full human replacement, rather than build specific tools for specific purposes. So I believe that if we take a different tack of building purpose-driven AI tools for things like scientific research, or for things like mathematics, or even for things like, helping you keep your calendar, but that they're actually tested for being able to do those things well and reliably and in a trustworthy and safe way, that will be a huge economic boost relative to the current direction that things are going, which is more focused on wholesale replacement of human labor. So I think the crucial thing is that there is an external evaluation system that can test by an independent agency or authority that an AI system is safe and reliable before it goes to market, just as Max was discussing.
So the products that we're seeing today have been driven by demand. I would expect that there's the prospect of an ROI and based on that satisfies the expenses of the research and development process, and that's what's driving the commercialization of the products that we currently see, and is driving the discussion about how it can go farther. But if we were to talk about a pause or or changing the direction that's being taken, what's the lever that you would propose can be pulled to initiate that? Because it would seem that right now, what Mr. Aguirre, that what the companies are doing is they're looking to provide products, and through those products, solutions to consumers, being individuals and businesses that are going to make, frankly, are going to make them money.
Okay, just hang on a sec here before we get to the answer. I've stopped your time. Mr. Tegmark, I do see your hand up. I'm assuming it's because you have something you want to add. The questions are directed generally to the person by the member of the committee. So perhaps when it's your time to speak, you can answer in regards to the point you want to make, or somebody can ask you directly. But the question is to Mr. Aguirre from Mr. Barrett. Your time has started again.
Yes. So the direction of AI products to actual consumer needs is exactly what I would like there to be, and exactly I think what there will be if we focus on tools that are actually built for people to help them. What we're seeing is a mixture of that in some cases with another dynamic, which is what is the dynamic, the same dynamic that drove the social media rollout, which is to try to capture as large as possible of a market share as quickly as possible. So, for example, I'm an educator. All three of us are. Overnight, it happened that you could not assign essays to students or even problem sets in physics or mathematics because suddenly there was an AI system that would simply do the students' homework for them. And the students feel like essentially they have to use AI to write their essays or do their problem sets because all of the other students are using those things. And so this is not something that was demanded by the educational system. This is something that was pushed into the educational system to the detriment of our students.
Pardon the interruption. I have limited time, and I do appreciate you answering my question. But how would you propose the solution that you have or the direction that you propose comes to pass? Is it a question of enforceability? Is it a question of leadership in government? Is it a question? How do you envision that coming to pass? Because, like you said, they're looking to capture as much market share as they can, as fast as they can.
I'm going to ask in 30 seconds or less, please.
The same. Pharma companies also want to capture as much profit as they can, and they still have to prove that their products are safe and effective before they go to market. I think the same thing should be true of AI. Specify what your AI product is supposed to do and and explain how it does that safely and reliably to an external authority, get it approved, and put it on market. And I think that will lead to much, much better AI products and much better adoption, as well as change the direction from all-purpose systems that are meant to replace people to useful tools that are meant to help them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. Madame Lapointe de la Partie libérale pour 6 minutes. Commencez-vous.
6 minutes Liberal Party. Hi, welcome. I'm happy to have you here with us. Something today struck me. We have heard many witnesses. They are researchers like you. They come and talk about AI. And we've only seen one woman. Is it because... What's the place of women in there? Do women have a different vision compared to the researchers who came and said that there are major issues? You spoke about super intelligent AI and how we don't know how to control it and how it will impact everyone's lives, men, women, and children. Is there a different point of view compared to what you just detailed, so the risks and the dangers? I will start by asking Mr. Kruger, and then you can all answer afterwards.
Monsieur Kruger, oui.
I think this mostly reflects just the underrepresentation of women in AI in general. I would say there are, a number of women who share these concerns, who you could also speak to, including Tegan Maharaj, a professor at HEC Montreal, Ajay Kotra, Katya Grace, etc. There are different perspectives in the field in general. I think, as I mentioned, over time, the perspective that I have that this is an urgent existential risk has become more and more popular. And I think that reflects, a growing awareness of the issue and also the rate of progress that we've seen in AI, which has exceeded almost everybody's expectations.
J'aurais une autre question pour vous, Monsieur Kruger.
I have another question for you, Mr. Kruger. What would be priority public investment in order to reduce the asymmetry between government and AI companies?
So if I understand the question, it's how would we get government to a place where it has a similar level of technical competence with AI compared to the AI companies. I think that's very difficult. I think probably the first step is to try and hold the companies accountable more and regulate them more seriously. So, one reason why I think they have so much more talent is because they're able to pay much higher salaries, because they're, making they're getting lots of investment based on this premise that they will build AGI and superintelligence and then again take everybody's job, and so make trillions of dollars off of that. So right now there's a huge imbalance in terms of the talent, and that's not something that can easily be corrected, frankly. It would be a pretty lengthy process to fully address that. On the other hand, right now I think one of the main issues is a lack of transparency into AI companies. So there's very little, oversight in terms of what they're doing. It used to be the case, maybe 5 years ago, that these companies would publish most of the research they did, and so there was sort of a shared understanding in the research community of how the most advanced systems work, and that also helps audit the systems for safety more effectively. This has stopped being the case, so companies really don't release very much information at all about their systems, and mandated. So, we need programs for independent experts to be able to, look at the details of the AI systems, and that includes not just evaluating or testing the model. It also includes having the necessary information about how the model was developed, what data was used, which is often copyrighted data. There's been a number of large-scale lawsuits about that. What training methods were used? Was it trained in a way that is known to cause addiction and dependency and other psychological issues? We know that this is, something that has happened repeatedly in the tech industry with social media and with AI. And also, how is the system being deployed? With what additional safeguards and guardrails? And what is the company doing to monitor how it's being used? So companies have a strong incentive to understand how their products are being used in order to make more money off of them. That's something that the government also needs to do.
Merci. Je vais aussi poser une question à monsieur.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Aguirre. I'm sorry, I only have 6 minutes. Mr. Aguirre, can we compare risk associated with AI, with advanced AI, with risks such as climate and nuclear? Sometimes we hear that. Is this a fundamentally different issue?
In 45 seconds, please.
Similarities and differences. I think nuclear weapons pose a particular risk, which is when they explode. And the analog to that is if we build superintelligence and lose control of it. But AI is posing significant risks right now and is doing significant harm right now because it is so underregulated and undergoes essentially no safety testing. So there, as Max mentioned, there's strong evidence that there are large effects on suicidal ideation and sort of media addiction in our young people. That is harm that is being done right now. And we clearly see the beginnings of effects on on labor with replacing humans with AI systems. That is the design, that is the goal to do at large scale. Okay. So I think we are going to see the risk of AI is replacing humans in roles that they should not be replaced in by a machine, as therapists, as companions, as romantic companions, as workers, etc.
Thank you.
And that scales all the way up to replacing humans as decision makers and even replacing humanity altogether in the longer term. So I think
sorry, Mr. Aguirre, we're over time.
It can be more diffuse.
Okay, thank you, sir. Monsieur Thériault.
Mr. Thériault from the block, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Aguirre, Kruger, and Tegmar, thank you for your statements. They have taught me a lot. They show that there is no complacency and shows why we are a committee that focuses on ethics. Today, we are talking about the need to establish a scientific consensus. And at each session, we are getting closer to that consensus. Mr. Aguirre, starting with you. In your article called Keeping the Future Human, you talked about how computing power can be easily quantified and audited and accounted for with little ambiguity once the rules are created. Mr. Kruger, you are saying that high-tech AI is an immense project. I would like your opinions on the possible feasibility of a verification system. And Mr. Tegmark, maybe you can add to the answer as well afterwards. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Happy to start. Yes, I think it's absolutely feasible. As David suggested, AI is only made possible through huge amounts of computation done by very specialized chips. These chips are built essentially by one company, using machines built by one company, and designs built by a handful of companies. We've seen a lot of discussion of this compute capability in terms of export restrictions and controls. But these chips have hardware level, it isn't just about where the chips go, but controls that can be on them. These chips have hardware level security capabilities that enable verification of their level and type of use. And just as your phone can be remotely bricked if someone steals it, AI hardware can and should be configured so that it could be shut down at the hardware level. I think the more powerful the AI, the more it needs a reliable off switch. So we can use the capabilities of the hardware, that is the sort of base layer at which these AI systems are operating, both to add a layer of control and to add a layer of verification if we institute red lines that should not be crossed in their development and deployment.
Okay, I'll jump in. Yeah, I'll agree with what Anthony said. Yeah, I think it's really important to emphasize just how much investment is going into this. And, in the past, people used to think that there was no real way to regulate AI and make sure nobody's doing something dangerous with it because it's software and, anybody could do it on their laptop in their garage. That's not at all the case right now. We're in a case right now where, these systems are taking hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. I'm not sure, this isn't the sort of stuff that I think is publicly disclosed these days, but huge, huge investments, and that continues to increase. And the hardware is extremely specialized, as Anthony mentioned. So this is the main point, I think, for intervention, for international regulation of AI, which, as I mentioned, I believe is absolutely critical. The only thing I would add is that I think it's very important to think about how to make such a scheme as robust as possible. And so verification might look like something like a whitelist of types of AI systems that are allowed to be run on the computer chips. It also might look like just location tracking so that we know where the chips are in case we need to recall them. But I think, in fact, we should stop developing more powerful AI systems immediately. And doing that, I think the most robust way of doing that would be to actually stop building the chips as opposed to trying to set up a more complicated and less robust system of technical verification. So that's my personal view, is we should stop building the chips and we should stop building and maintaining the factories that produce the chips to give us some breathing room because, as I mentioned, and the other experts, we have potentially a few years here, and this is not a situation where we have time to try and find the perfect solution. We need to immediately implement a solution that will slow or pause the just incredible rate of progress towards superintelligence.
Vous êtes d'accord avec ça, Mr. Tegmark?
Do you agree with that, Mr. Tegmark?
Yeah, we heard some detailed technical answers to this important question here about what practical steps can be taken. And I just want to add that we're not... It was mentioned earlier, are we talking about a pause here on AI? I'm not talking about a pause on AI at all. I'm just talking about a pause on AI girlfriends for 12-year-olds, AI that can teach terrorists to make bioweapons, and other products that are clearly more harmful than beneficial for Canadians. And this is no different than, what the health product and food branch of Health Canada does all the time for medicines. We don't say that Canada has a pause on medicines just because Health Canada does not allow pharma products that haven't undergone clinical trials to be released, right? So we can simply do for AI exactly the same thing that we've done for medicines, restaurants, as a very first step in the right direction.
Il reste juste 5 secondes,
You
Monsieur
have
Terrier.
5 seconds left, Mr. Terriot. You still need to draw a difference between specialized AI and artificial superintelligence. There are some things that are easier to control, for example, AI girlfriends for children, compared to this relentless race for super AI.
Monsieur Hardy.
Mr. Hardy, you can start the second round. You have 5 minutes. Mr. Hardy is from the Conservative Party. Thank you for being here, everyone. Let's start with Mr. Tegmark, who we haven't heard too much from today yet. You talked about AI's potential to be transformative, and you talk about positive objectives for humanity. I want to hear what you have to say about medical research. Is that coming in the near future? Are these goals that we need to look at? And how can that change the medical field? How can it improve it? And then maybe my next question will be asking, should governments be involved to help our society, to help things such as chronic disease or degenerative disease? So I want to hear what you have to say about AI and the medical field.
Yeah, thank you. This is something very close to my heart. AI has enormous potential for improving medical treatments, curing cancer, and so on. And this is not in the future. It's in the past already. We've seen, even though all the AI companies talk a lot about curing cancer, there's actually one company only that has really made real progress here. That's Google DeepMind, released AlphaFold, got the Nobel Prize for it, which is really helping drug discovery. Cancer has already gone from killing maybe 80% of the people for some types to 20%. So we're sort of 80% of the way or there towards curing cancer. The key risk I worry about here is simply that we squander all these incredible benefits by letting AI-based pharma remain completely unregulated, which can cause a backlash. Many of you remember there was a product called thalidomide that was sold in Canada and in America to pregnant women with morning nausea. And because pharma was completely unregulated back then, this caused over 100,000 babies in North America to be born without arms or legs, which is in turn why the Food and Drug Administration was created. So yes, let companies innovate amazingly cure diseases with AI, but let's treat them the same way we treat pharma companies and just make sure they don't get to release products until they've been properly tested.
Donc, en gros, ce que vous dites, c'est que l'intelligence
So essentially, you're saying that AI can really help the planet solve many chronic diseases and heal many degenerative diseases. But the problem is not the speed of the progression, but rather you cannot just let companies that are only motivated by profit to put into market products that are not ready yet. However, I think that it can even help with ultra-specialized treatments. Do you also see that in your research? In the overall AI market, to have treatment that is even more specialized for each specific human instead of having this more general approach?
Absolutely. There's huge potential in making customized treatments, can sequence the patient's DNA, for example, for cancer, figuring out which particular mutations do they have in their cancer cells, develop a custom treatment just for them. Absolutely incredible opportunities there. And I'm a firm believer in innovation and in private sector innovation. The key to get this is to create the right incentives. So in pharma, in aviation and restaurants even, industry innovates to produce safe products where the harm outweighs the good, because those are the ones that they're allowed to sell, right? And if we can quickly create the correct incentives for the AI industry, then these companies that are currently doing, in my opinion, very reckless things will quickly focus on innovating a race to the top with safe products. It's not, I don't blame the companies. I blame simply the lack of providing the right incentives to them.
Merci beaucoup. Ma dernière question va aller
Thank you very much. My final question will be directed towards Mr. Kruger. Earlier today, and this is the first time we heard it, we've been hearing about how private companies are aiming to even remove humans from the equation. So to reduce the number of people who are hired by companies who will adopt AI. Currently, are companies studying ROI? So big tech is saying, is big tech companies saying, okay, we did right to convert humans to AI or to use AI instead of humans? Or are they realizing that actually overseeing AI is just as costly as humans?
Monsieur Hardy, je m'excuse, mais je vais commencer avec Madame Church.
I'm sorry, but I will now move to Ms. Church for 5 minutes, because I think the answer will take too long. Ms. Church, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a great question.
Probably back to Mr. Tegmark. You've spoken quite a bit about binding safety standards, and I appreciate the comparison to how we approach drug and pharmaceutical regulation. And I guess my question would be, so as parliamentarians, as lawmakers, where do you see us starting on this? It's one thing to look at some of the outcomes of uses of chatbots and AI, particularly where it crosses into child safety. I think that those are certainly some very key and obvious areas where we need to be looking at how to ensure safety. But how else do we, in some ways, capture the breadth of how AI works across so many different fields, touches many industries, touches many potentially problematic areas? How do we capture that in a regulatory model that would be effective for us to address some of the harms that you're raising?
Great question. I think the simple way to view this is, for all of the diverse applications of AI, simply have this same approach that we have in all other powerful industries, that it's the company's jobs to innovate and demonstrate independent government-appointed experts that the harms are outweighed by benefits. I would start probably politically with child safety, because that is so incredibly politically salient right now and winnable. In America, we have about 95% of Republicans and Democrats agreeing that has to happen. I call it the Bernie to Bannon coalition. And I think we're likely to see some legislation this year here in the US. And then once this precedent is set that we're going to treat AI like any other industry, then we can add to the list of safety standards, not only that they mustn't greatly enhance suicide risk in kids, but national security things like you can't sell things if they can teach terrorists to make bioweapons. You can't release things if they could overthrow the government, like we heard from Professor Aguirre and Professor Kruger. It flows naturally from this simple approach of just treating AI companies like other companies. And I want to just add one more thing, which is, if this business about loss of control sounds strange, it's a very obvious idea that goes back to Alan Turing, 1951, that if you actually build a bunch of robots that are vastly smarter than all humans, then of course they can build robot factories and make new robots. And this is actually very much what companies are trying to do now. And because they can make more robots, they check off definition of being a species. And if you go down to your nearby zoo and ask yourself, who is in the cages right now? Which species is it? Is it the humans? No, it's not. Why not? Because we are the smartest species on Earth. And what we're basically saying is, let's keep it that way. Let's not let companies sell something
Let me jump in here. I think that you're probably hearing from us a lot of interest in how do we get our arms around this issue. And maybe let me turn to Mr. Aguirre for a moment, because both of you were involved in the Future of Life Institute. And I'm very interested in the concept of tool AI. I hadn't heard that expression before, and I think that that's interesting in terms of thinking about how do we bound some of these models into specific areas that they're working in. How do we limit their breadth? One of the things I'd like to ask you, just in terms of your knowledge of other organizations or your own that are working in the space, is anyone embarking on something like a model code, something that countries around the world could look at as we go down this path of trying to very quickly regulate or establish safety parameters in a very fast-moving sector? How are organizations like yours helping us, parliamentarians, legislatures around the globe, to move in a direction that captures how we should be approaching this issue?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's a sort of frustrating chicken and egg problem in that it's hard to build up the sort of governance capacity in terms of the evaluations and the sort of certifications and like the whole infrastructure that is needed to evaluate and test these models when there's no requirement to do so. Right? There's sort of no customer without some sort of regulation that's requiring those things. On the other hand, when you're thinking about regulations, it feels very daunting that there are all of these different use cases for these systems, and you have to think about how am I going to regulate all these things. So I think as Max has pointed out and you suggested, I think it's critical to identify some first steps to take. Maybe it's around child safety testing or just requirements that when you produce an AI system, along this sort of tool orientation, you say what it's for, and then you can start to assess whether that AI system is fit for that purpose.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We were over time on that one. Monsieur Thériault, je vais te donner 5.
Mr. Thériault, I will give you 5 minutes for your questions. You may start. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Aguirre. And I quote the leaders of DeepMind, OpenAI, and Anthropic, who have all signed declarations saying that AI may lead to the extinction of humanity. You said that this is unprecedented, as they are building these systems with commercial incentives that have basically no government oversight. What do you think about businesses that are putting warnings against their own products while continuing to develop them? I would also like to hear Mr. Kruger's answer as well.
It's really pretty astonishing. I mean, we've never seen an industry that was both developing something and sort of publicly admitting how very dangerous that thing is. And I think this is a product of where, how the industry has peculiarly developed and in particular, race condition that these companies find themselves in. Just a couple of weeks ago in Davos, we heard from 2 of the heads of AI companies that they would like to slow down. They feel worried about what they're doing, but they feel that they can't because they're in a race. And if they hit the gas, everyone else is going to keep their foot on the accelerator and they'll lose out. So all of these companies feel that they have to build this thing because somebody is going to do it. And they feel like if somebody's going to do it, well, it might as well be us. And this is a crazy situation for us to be in, just like the classic arms race that ended up with 70,000 nuclear warheads that nobody felt like it was such overkill. That's where we ended up because there was an arms race. And we're in a similar situation here where it takes an outside actor, and it really has to be the government to call a quit to the race. They're not going to be able to do it by themselves, even if they want to.
Yeah, so I agree with this. I think what's happening here, it's been used to push this narrative that this is some sort of corporate, PR stunt or something, the idea of human extinction. This is demonstrably false, as somebody who has been in this field for much longer than these companies have even existed in the case of Anthropic or OpenAI. These concerns go back decades. And so, there was it's commendable that the CEOs have acknowledged these risks. At the same time, maybe sometimes they exaggerate things, but I think that in order to, hype up their product or something, but I think that's basically not what's going on. I think what's going on is that they are desperate because they see that they are a few years away from building something that they are scared of. And, they want something to step in and defuse the race if possible. However, they don't believe that that's possible generally, and I think that's the mistake. I think we need to understand that that is possible. That's why I mention the computer chips as a key point of intervention. If these companies and nobody globally can get access to these giant piles of chips and the energy to build these data centers, then we won't see this race continuing at anything like the current pace. I will also add that I think, why are they doing this ultimately? I think there's this element of if we don't do it, somebody else will. There's the desire to make tons of money. I think for some people, they also want to usher in this new species that Max was talking about. They want to see humanity replaced by AI, what they view as sort of the natural next step in evolution. There are many public comments to this effect from various people within the industry. So this is an incredibly antisocial attitude.
Sorry. I want to take the conversation, somewhere else, to draw a conclusion. Mr. Aguirre, you said that there needs to be cooperation between the USA, China, and other countries. And they can create this strong oversight system to ensure that all sides respect this. You talked about a fund for the creation of superintelligence or something like that, right? But what can we as a committee do? For example, can we start negotiations or reach such an agreement? Because you're not the only ones who have said that. So what can we do very quickly? Mr. Aguirre and Mr. Kruger.
10 seconds, please. 10 seconds.
Well, I think Canada can certainly stake out a position in its own self-protection that we should not be building superintelligence. I think it will be critical that an end to this race will actually require both the U.S. and China to realize that it's against their own self-interest to build superintelligent AI. As long as they believe that it will grant them power, they will want to pursue it. But this is not the case. Superintelligent AI will absorb rather than grant power. So if they realize this, then it is in their interest as well as everybody else's not to have it developed. And that's the foundation.
Mr. Kruger, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to respond if you don't mind, please. Thank you.
We need negotiations for an international treaty to begin immediately. I want everyone here to talk to everyone they know who has any ability to make something like that happen and tell them exactly that. Tell them what you've heard here from all of us and the previous experts.
Thank you, sir. Monsieur Hardy, pour 2 minutes 30 secondes, s'il vous plaît.
Mr. Hardy, you have 2.5 minutes. Thank you. I will ask my question to Mr. Kruger again. I think it's an important question. So we see a lot of businesses that are investing in AI with the goal to eventually replace employees and to make more profit. Last week I raised this question at committee and it led to great answers. So do you see these big tech companies that are investing in AI? How are they measuring their ROI? Do they really see good return on investment? Or is the cost of managing AI to make sure that the work is done properly, is it more expensive than having a well-trained employee?
There's going to be cases where it's more expensive or less expensive at present. And one important thing to recognize is that AI doesn't have to do the job better if it can do it much cheaper. So we might see replacement of competent humans with less competent AI at scale because it's just cheaper, which I think would be a bad outcome. On the other hand, I think we have to think about where this is all headed because it's going there very fast in a few years. So I think within a few years, we will see AI that is, extremely competitive replacement for most human labor. And that is the premise on which these investments are being made. The massive investments to build AI are justified by the belief that this, in fact, will, or at least might, lead to the creation of something like superintelligence. intelligence like we've been describing here.
Mais est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, on a les compagnies...
Today, so business never invest without looking at KPI and things like that. People are always talking about the future, but what about the measurements today? Currently, is there ROI or is nothing measured when it comes to their investment?
They're measuring some things. I mean, I think, Silicon Valley companies, historically, they care more about growth and dominating a market and addicting customers before, they even tried to make a profit. So I think like Amazon famously didn't make any profit for like 10 years or something. I think, I don't know what they're looking at right now, but I don't think that this is, what is driving the investment. And I think if you take seriously the possibility of AGI and superintelligence in a few years, which the investors and especially the people building it do, then the investment is certainly justified, except that this is also incredibly dangerous and shouldn't be happening. And if it kills everybody, it will kill the investors, it will kill the people who own these companies, it will kill everybody in this room. And it won't matter if we've created a bunch of good businesses, as Sam Altman says. It won't matter if we've cured cancer, etc.
Thank you, Mr. Kruger. Appreciate that. Monsieur Sarré,
Mr. Sorry, we will end this round. You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank our witnesses. Thank you for your speeches. I have 2.5 minutes to talk about a very complicated question that is very important to me. You talked about risks, and we all agreed that there are a lot of risks. So now the question is how to intervene. In what field? We're not talking about Gen AI necessarily, but we're also not necessarily talking about superintelligence or agentic AI. One thing that worries me a lot is the fact that there is the concentration of cognitive power in the hands of AI. Why does that worry me? Because that's how that directs overall learning and universal connectivity. So how can we talk about human control or government control, real control, when AI systems learn and evolve? And they make decisions at a pace that is faster than our ability to understand or challenge it.
Anybody? Mr. Tegmark, can I start with you?
Yeah. What you're so eloquently describing there is the digital gain of function research, also known as recursive self-improvement, where AI makes better AI, which makes better AI. Again, it's easy to deal with. We've already dealt with it in biology here in America. We've banned gain of function research, and there's very strong opposition to it now after the possibility that this might have caused the COVID pandemic. So we should similarly ban digital gain of function research. It's a no-brainer. Yet right now, a number of companies in America are explicitly doubling down on this kind of digital gain of function research because they're unregulated.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tegmark. Does anybody have, Mr. Kruger, Mr. Aguirre, do you have anything to add in like 15 or 20 seconds or less to that question?
Yeah, I guess I think it's important to emphasize that this issue does need to be tackled internationally, and I think it's something that Anthony and Max talking about tool AI. I think it's true that that's a great place to aim for. But I do think we may need to, do something pretty drastic in the immediate future to actually be able to monitor and enforce an international agreement to stop this race. And then once we've sort of gotten control of the situation, we can think about how we want to proceed to develop, beneficial tool AI.
Thank you, Mr. Kruger. Thank you. I'm going to have to cut it off there. We're at the end of the hour. I want to thank all three of you for participating in this discussion, and on behalf of the committee, say thank you. We are going to suspend for a couple of minutes while we change over to our second hour panel with the Privacy Commissioner. The meeting is suspended. as we return to studying the challenges posed by artificial intelligence and its regulation. I want to welcome for the second hour today from the offices of the Information and Privacy Commissioners of Canada, Mr. Philip Dufresne, who is the Privacy Commissioner of Canada. Always good to have you back with us, sir. And Marc Chenier, who's the Deputy Commissioner and Senior General Counsel. Mr. Dufresne, you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. Go ahead, please.
Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs les membres du comité.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the invitation to appear as part of your study on the opportunities and considerations raised by AI and its regulation. Taking into account the privacy impacts of fast-moving pace of technological advancements is one of my strategic priorities. It has always been at the focus of my domestic, cross-regulatory, and international work over the last few years, given its rapid and broad adoption by individuals and organizations in Canada and around the world.
And timely issue for Canada. As more and more personal data is being collected, used, and shared, data protection becomes increasingly significant for Canadians and Canadian organizations. The protection of personal information is particularly important in the context of AI, as personal information can be used to train and operate those systems. Recently, I announced an expanded investigation into the social media platform X and its Grok chatbot. The investigation will examine the emerging phenomenon of AI being used to create deepfakes, which can present significant risks to Canadians, including children. Je m'attends à ce que les résultats de cette enquête.
I expect the results of this investigation, as well as my ongoing investigation into OpenAI, help inform privacy and policy direction with respect to AI, and help individuals and organizations use and deploy these technologies in a safe, responsible, and with appropriate protections for personal data. Investigations by my office over the last 2 years have demonstrated how Canadian law is able to address major privacy issues that can have serious impacts on individuals.
Investigation into ALO, which operates Pornhub and other pornographic websites, addressed non-consensual sharing of intimate images. My joint investigation with my UK counterpart into the 23andMe breach examined an incident that impacted the highly sensitive personal information of 7 million customers, including more than 300,000 Canadians. Last fall, I announced the result of my investigation with my provincial counterparts into TikTok, which highlighted the importance of protecting children's privacy online. Because of our investigation, the company has implemented and continues to implement improvements to its privacy practices in the best interest of its users, especially children. Technologies such as AI can bring economic, social, and public interest benefits. The value of this innovation will be maximized when it is accompanied by trust. Un sondage mené par le commissariat l'année dernière.
A survey conducted by my office last year found that a significant majority of Canadians are concerned about how their personal information is collected and used. In fact, 80% of them indicate that they are concerned about their privacy when they use AI tools. Many have taken actions to protect themselves. Most indicated that they are less willing to share their personal information with organizations compared to 5 years ago.
For organizations to develop and deploy AI and other technologies in a responsible, privacy-preserving manner. It is key for developers and providers of AI to embed privacy in the design, conception, operation, and management of their products and services, and to consider the unique impact that these tools have on children, as well as on groups that have historically experienced discrimination or bias. Organizations that use AI should be transparent about this use and accountable for any AI-generated decisions about an individual, such as whether to grant someone a loan or a job. Alors que les technologies continuent d'évoluer rapidement et s'intègrent.
As technologies continue to evolve rapidly and become increasingly integrated into our personal and professional lives, it is our collective role as regulators and policymakers to make sure that privacy is protected for current and future generations. Canadian privacy laws must be able to meet this challenge. And to do so, these laws will require modernization.
Amendments to Canada's federal privacy laws include recognizing privacy as a fundamental right, as well as establishing requirements to implement privacy by design and to conduct privacy impact assessments for high-impact data processing. Personal information is at the heart of artificial intelligence, and therefore, privacy legislation should, in my view, be at the heart of AI regulation. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dufresne. We're going to start with Mr. Barrett for 6 minutes. I'm going to keep it tight on time. Mr. Barrett, start for 6. Go ahead.
Tell me about what have been called Chinese spy cars. And the Premier of Ontario, Mr. Ford, has expressed serious concerns about the plans for the Canadian market to accept nearly 50,000 vehicles manufactured by companies like BYD. And what your office is taken a look at so far with respect to those vehicles and that claim, perhaps informed or otherwise by Mr. Ford.
Thank you for the question. I have heard those statements, and we are monitoring the situation generally with respect to connected vehicles. We've, in fact, this year launched our contribution program on the theme of connected devices and looking forward to finding out more about the types of connection, the types of data information that is collected by cars and other types of devices. In terms of the Chinese angle, we are not looking at this specifically, but in the context of our TikTok investigation, one of the elements that we highlighted in our conclusion was that when data will leave Canadian jurisdiction, when there is a risk that other governments can have access to this information, this is something that Canadians should know about. This should be transparent. And so in our TikTok report of findings, we requested and the organization agreed to make this explicit.
Just on TikTok, do you have a recommendation for Canadians on whether or not they should use the app?
Well, our recommendation to Canadians is that they should ask questions about this app or any app, and frankly, any situation where their personal information is being sought. Asking, why do you need it? What will you do with it? Who will you share it with? And so in the TikTok investigation, we addressed these head on, looking at what is the organization telling Canadians? Because it's one thing for citizens to ask questions. Organizations have a big responsibility to be proactive in this transparency. And so in the TikTok case, we found that the information wasn't clear enough. It wasn't clear enough for adults, and it was certainly not clear enough for children, which is a huge part of that market. So questions like the use, the sharing, the purposes, where it's going, who can have access to it. So Canadians should ask more of these questions, but organizations should proactively take the responsibility to make that information easy to find.
Have you seen a change in the proactive information offered by TikTok to Canadians since you made those recommendations?
Well, I would say yes, because we are working with them and monitoring the implementation of our recommendations. Our recommendations had a 6 months period to put them in place. A big one was better tools to keep children, underage children, off the platform altogether. And others had to do with the transparency, with the consent, with the information. So they've implemented a number of those, and they have until March to complete the rest. And we're going to be monitoring that to make sure this happens.
And what's the outcome if they were to, so first of all, based on their cooperation to this point, it's your expectation that they'll meet the deadline? And should they not, what would be the outcome?
Well, should they not, then one of the gaps in privacy legislation is I don't have order-making powers.
Right.
And so we have to count on their collaboration, and we have to work with them. And so far, it is working, and I'm cautiously optimistic that it's going to continue to work. But this is why a key element of law reform has to be order-making powers for the Privacy Commissioner.
Pressed for time, I'm gonna move on. I just want to ask about your investigation of X Corp, and this is incredibly important. Obviously, the harms that are being done in real time, especially, but not only to children, but especially to children, with the non-consensual images that are being propagated, being created. it's alarming. What kind of a position are you in your role as a Canadian commissioner with the lack of order-making power? Do you lack the enforcement tools necessary to be able to effectively execute your role in a way that would protect Canadians, especially children, in a situation where the gravity of it can be lost on no one?
Well, I'll say two things. One, I need to have order-making powers. This should be a top priority for Parliament. I'm encouraged by statements from the Minister of AI that modernization is something that's being contemplated. That being said, I am and will continue to use the existing tools that I currently have to protect Canadians' privacy with investigations, with the recommendations, but also working with partners in Canada and internationally. So in the context of deepfakes, we have issued statements calling this out as early as December 2023. We're working with international partners to bring the international community together in taking steps. And so that's one thing that I've done, for instance, in the 23andMe case in terms of the breach of Canadians' information. I don't have order-making powers. My UK counterpart does. And together, we did that for Canadians.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dufresne. Mr. Barrett, Monsieur Sarré pour 6 minutes.
Mr. Sarré, you have 6 minutes. Thank you. Before asking my question, I want to go back on your mandate, which is the overall protection of privacy. They are based on fundamental issues such as transparency and accountability, and the ability for individuals to understand and challenge AI solutions. And however, you know that AI changes how decisions are made. For example, whether it's Gen AI or cognitive AI or agentic AI, there are things that do not give us that decision-making capability. It's like this black box. We do not see the decision-making patterns. So my first question for you, in such a context, we see that technology is evolving very quickly. How does your office evolve and assess real human control? Can we talk about whether there is real human control? Well, you're entirely right. Privacy principles can change over time because these are fundamental issues that affect freedom, dignity, the ability to choose what we share with who. Now, with technology, we are facing serious issues because technology is evolving very quickly. So organizations like mine need to play catch up. We need to know how these tools work. We need to have the technological ability, and we have created that in my office, to understand that technology and to act accordingly. When it comes to human decisions, we also need to raise these issues, whether that's in legislative reviews or reforms. For example, more transparency in the world of AI to understand how decisions are made, but we also have to make sure that humans are in the loop. Recently, I was at the World Assembly for Privacy, and they put forward a resolution adopted by the international community related to the role of humans in AI and what that needs to represent. So it's a very relevant issue, and that kind of solves the issue of the black box. So it's more of a technological black box. That's how neural networks work, right? You cannot walk back on that and change it. It started back in the 80s and will keep working that way. So you talked about understanding technology. Do you believe that the right to privacy is still fully respected right now? There are certainly cases where it is not respected. We talked about the TikTok decision where we saw shortcomings in that field. The same went for Staples. So there are issues. What is important is to have the tools to deal with these shortcomings. Ideally, we work in a preventative measure, but if not, we can do it after the fact. And I believe there's technologically neutral solutions that can evolve with technology. However, the law needs to be modernized to make it easier. For example, this identification and transparency. How can you add transparency when organizations themselves are saying that they do not understand why they arrived at certain decisions? The chair of Google recently said so. However, the PIPEDA creates a good framework. I'm reassured by the fact that you talked about frameworks because all the articles that I have read brought forward the issue of the opacity of AI technology. I understand your role. I have a lot of respect for it. I think it's an essential role. And your work reassures me. On my end, when we want to talk about control, as House of Commons, as a committee, what should we do? So that we can be able to control things with the knowledge that there is opacity. In my opinion, the most important thing that you can do as parliamentarians is to amend the law. It's an essential tool. I made 7 priority recommendations to the government that I have shared with the committee. For example, we talked about stronger law enforcement powers, recognizing privacy as a fundamental right. It is more important than ever with AI. For example, privacy at the onset. So when organizations create a tool that has a lot of impacts, privacy needs to be included at the start and not at the end. And then we need to talk about data that will leave Canada. We need to build a framework around that. So we talk about information collection as well as processing it, secure it, and then transmit it abroad. So when you talk about protecting privacy, it's related to all of that. But now back to individuals. Do you have a vulnerability category for people? Who are the most vulnerable? We talked about young people. We talked about women. Are certain groups more vulnerable than others? Very quick answer, please. Young people are very vulnerable because they are swimming in it. You're right. Women, the same goes for seniors. There are a lot of groups who need to be protected. Thank you, Mr. Terrien. 6 minutes. You meant Mr. Terrien, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Mr. Commissioner. You talked about the international aspect. Mr. Chair, point of order. I do not hear Mr. Terrien too well. I think it's better now. I will restart the clock. Thank you. I want to talk about the statement made by G7 leaders who said that they need to work together to accelerate AI adoption in the public sector and to improve services to accelerate services to people and businesses while protecting human rights and also while ensuring transparency and fairness. They also want to promote economic prosperity by encouraging small and medium businesses to adopt AI that will respect IP rights as well as personal rights. Inaudible for the interpreter. We also improve competitiveness and productivity. What should the key elements of the G7 leaders adopt when it comes to an AI centered on humans? So you referred to the G7 leaders statement. G7 privacy commissioners had our own meeting at Lake Meech. what should the key elements of the G7 leaders adopt when it comes to an AI centered on humans? So you refer to the G7 leaders statement. G7 privacy commissioners had our own meeting at Lake Meech. And in June, we made a unanimous statement on the importance of prioritizing privacy for two things: to promote innovation and the economy, and to protect children and other people. And we did refer to the leaders' declaration on that, and we provided concrete examples. For example, taking into account the best interest of children and of people when technologies are being created and put onto the market. The importance of privacy at the onset and not at the end. We also talked about how transparency is important, how it's important to talk to people to create trust. A lot of people say that, well, a strong privacy system can limit innovation, and I challenge that, and our statement at the G7 also challenged that. In fact, we say that it will encourage innovation, it will support economic development, because it will lead to more trust amongst people, amongst consumers towards this technology, and we see it in the surveys that I have referred to earlier. So it is essentially from a rights perspective, if we want to protect people, it's important for all of us, for our freedom and dignity. But from a pragmatic perspective, it will also help the global economy and especially the Canadian economy. So we sent a strong message in Ottawa, and I was very proud of it. And we are still promoting it here and everywhere else. So when it comes to improving the quality of public services and the improvement of government productivity, how can you reconcile the acceleration of AI adoption with the respect of privacy, as well as the promotion of transparency, fairness, and accountability? Well, we need to strike that balance. Tools will improve productivity. They can support all kinds of economic development. They can also support improvements in healthcare. It can improve citizen services. That's all great. But it needs to be done so in a humane and transparent manner. It needs to be centered on humans. And it needs to respect fundamental issues when it comes to respecting privacy. For example, no consent. For example, back in September, we conducted an analysis with the Competition Bureau and the CRTC and the Copyright Bureau related to what we call synthetic media, commonly called deepfakes. So we asked, what are the key issues? In some cases, technology can help create pictures, but if it's used to manipulate people, if it's used to create non-consensual sexual images, that crosses lines. That should not be crossed. So you cannot say innovation or privacy. Canadians need to have both. Work is a fundamental right. We can say it's part of human rights. People have come to us and said, for example, they often hear that people want to replace white-collar workers with AI. And once you reach this critical mass of people who have lost their jobs, how can you reconcile AI advancement? Because we're talking about the G7. And these people have made the state more productive. So when it comes to job protection, that is outside of my mandate related to privacy. But when you protect privacy, you protect individuals. You make things more transparent. You gain a better understanding of things. And then you can value what's human and what is not. And that may be part of the goals and the solutions. For example, saying maybe not compete with AI on things that are purely related to statistics and probability. However, the human advantage needs to be kept, and it will also be a critical advantage. Thank you, Mr. Thériault. And that is it for the first round, and we will now move on to the second round. Mr. Cooper, 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dufresne, the Prime Minister recently struck a deal with Xi Jinping to allow for the import of 50,000 Chinese EVs annually. He did so notwithstanding serious concerns regarding national security, regarding privacy concerns, including audio and video surveillance, as well as tracking people's movements. Premier Ford has characterized these EVs as spy vehicles. Others have also characterized them in the same way. The U.S. has a functional ban on vehicles that contain Chinese software. So in the face of these very serious concerns that go directly to the privacy of Canadians, did the Prime Minister's office or the Minister of International Trade or anyone in the government consult with your office about these concerns before striking a deal with Xi Jinping?
We were not consulted about this trade effort with China.
Thank you for that. About an hour ago in the House, the minister responsible for AI indicated that the government would be tabling updated PIPEDA legislation in the near future. Have you been consulted about that updated legislation?
Yes, I have. Myself and my team have been in communications with the department, and I'm pleased with how those exchanges have gone.
Okay, and do you expect that PIPEDA, the updated legislation, will give you the order-making power that you said moments ago that you need and that you do not have?
Well, that's going to be up to the government tabling the legislation. But my expectation, my hope, what I can say is I've made very clear to the government and to the House and to Parliament that this is one of my top priority recommendations, that I need a stronger enforcement power, and I am optimistic.
Okay. Changing gears a little bit, the Supreme Court, in its jurisprudence, in the Spencer decision, in the Bykovitz decision, has been clear. Access to personal information or personal data requires prior judicial authorization, correct?
In criminal cases and in administrative law cases, it wouldn't necessarily be the same.
Now, under the Liberal government's so-called cyber security bill, the Minister of Industry has the power to order a telecommunications service provider to collect, retain, and share with the minister things such as metadata, subscriber account information, website visits, the location of financial data, among other personal information, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And constitutional jurisprudence has recognized that metadata such as internet browsing activity is highly sensitive personal information that is protected by Section 8 of the Charter, that everyone has the right to be secure against unreasonable search and seizure, correct?
That's my general understanding of that jurisprudence, and under my legislation, sensitive information is entitled to higher levels of protection.
And that's because metadata can reveal a lot about someone's online activities and their personal life, among other privacy issues, correct?
Yes, the Supreme Court in Bykovitz talked about that, how much you can glean from this type of information.
Right. And Bill C-8 does not require the Minister of Industry to obtain prior judicial authorization as a precondition to ordering the collection, retention, and sharing of this highly sensitive personal information, such as metadata, does it?
No, it does not. This is not in a criminal context, and I should say that I appeared before the Secu Committee on C-8 and shared my recommended amendments to C-8, which include necessity and proportionality framing for the exercise of those powers.
And do you believe that there should be a requirement for the minister to obtain judicial authorization? Should it be narrowed, as opposed to, as it is currently written, in which the minister would have really broad powers to order the collection, retention, and the transferring of privacy information that the Supreme Court has been very clear about requires judicial authorization.
Right. Well, in my testimony, I highlighted that there is a balancing between the national security objectives, but that this is where necessity and proportionality become important. So in some parts of the bill, I highlighted that you only had necessity or
and so it would be fair to say at present it's not fully adequate from the standpoint of protecting Canadians' privacy interests. There's room for improvement.
I've made recommendations on the standard. I've made recommendation on information sharing agreements and also on notification to my office in cases of breaches.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Ms. Church, 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Dufresne, and thank you for once again being at the committee here and for all the work that your office is doing to shed light on some of these emerging and concerning privacy issues that we're seeing, particularly with AI and digital tools. I want to take you first in maybe a different and more positive direction, which is to say in a lot of the work that I do with seniors, with persons with disabilities, families, caregivers, I hear a lot about the challenges of navigating through government systems, navigating between provincial and federal systems, application processes. And one of the things I'm interested in a modernization effort is how can we better use data to support modern service models, proactive benefit eligibility, simplification of access to services. Are there anything that you're proposing in this modernization that would help us deliver services better as a government?
Well, I think that this is a very important point in the sense that privacy does not and should not stand in the way of the public interest. And so good government service delivery, data can help with that. Mm-hmm. Data can help even with protecting privacy itself in terms of privacy-enhancing technology. So I think in part of my recommendations, I'm talking about privacy by design, privacy impact assessment, for example. This is a great tool where if you have a process where you're going to be sharing information because you need to share it, or you're going to use it because you need it to make better decisions for Canadians, that transparency is important. That assessment is important. So in many cases where I will be asked for my views, I'm not going to say, don't do it. Don't give the police this tool if it's warranted and if there's a need for it. But it's going to be, is it necessary and proportional? Is it transparent? Have you assessed it? And my recommendations for amendments to both private sector privacy law and public sector privacy law go in that direction. Make sure that you have, for instance, right now, privacy law does not require for the public sector necessity and proportionality as an assessment. I think it should. I think this would allow for more sharing of information and use of information, but in a way that keeps Canadians' trust.
That safeguards that data, safeguards that privacy. No, I would agree with that. Can I ask you a little bit about the work that your office has undertaken around a children's privacy code, and just in terms of an update to the committee as to where that's at and what are the next steps?
Absolutely. Well, and this is another area where law reform would be beneficial, because in the previous Bill C-27 that was before the last Parliament, there was an element in there that would create the ability to have codes of practice that I would approve and that would give some protections to organizations, but also some obligations and some predictability. So Children's Code would fit very well in that regime. Right now we don't have that, so the Children's Code that I am working on putting in place is going to be setting out my office and my expectations to organizations. Things like best interest of the child, making sure that you have privacy protections by default if you're geared to children, making sure that the consent and the information is shared in a child-appropriate way. So all of that is underway with consultation with stakeholders of Canada and around the world. And a part of that also is the notion of age estimation and age assurance, and making sure that you're keeping kids off certain websites like TikTok if they're underage. How do you do that without going too far in taking too much personal information? So it's that balance that we want to help reach.
It's early days, but are you looking to any of the experience or lessons learned from early implementation of age verification in Australia?
We are, and we're working very collaboratively with colleagues from Australia, from the UK, from around the world, really looking at, we've issued some international statements about what do we want to see. So we want to see something that has data minimization. We want to see something that is transparent, that isn't used for more things than what it should be used, something that is secure against privacy breaches. So all of these, it's really an area where the international community is looking and is working, and Australia, quite rightly, because of their approach to social media, they've had to really accelerate that.
And you've mentioned order-making powers as one of the tools that you're looking for. Can you enlighten us with the other tools or capabilities that would be useful for your office to take something like a code and make sure that it's enforceable?
Right. So enforcement making powers, fine making powers, also to have monetary consequences in appropriate cases. Again, this is something I don't want to have to use them. I want the possibility of this to encourage organizations to invest in privacy. But other things is the issue of codes and making sure that if an organization is going to spend money to develop a code and to put in place a program, well, that costs them money. And if you're an SME, even if you're a bigger organization, that's an investment. And one of the things that we've heard from industry and from lawyers is that sometimes they have a hard time selling this to management, because what are they getting from that investment? If they're not getting any kind of regulatory protection, it's a harder sell. So what was in the Bill C-27 would say, you develop this code, if it's approved by the Privacy Commissioner, and then you have a complaint against you, then you can point to that code as showing, well, I'm in good faith here. And so it would make it much less likely that you have a fine or that you have even investigation. So to me, that puts the incentive in the right direction, makes it easier for SMEs and other companies.
Thank you.
Way over time. But I did want to give you a chance to respond to it because it was an important question. So, Monsieur Thériault, pour 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Mr. Thériault, you have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your opening statement, you talked about an in-depth investigation into X and its chatbot. How's that investigation going? And do you have all the tools to move forward with it quickly? And in your conversation you had with the minister and with its upcoming intentions, will you have even better tools to reach a better conclusion? So start with the second half of the question. In my public and private discussions, I made it very clear that having more powers is necessary. That is very obvious when I made the investigation into 23andMe. Me and my British counterpart made the same investigations. We arrived to the same conclusions, and he was able to impose a fine, and I was only able to put forward a recommendation. So we saw this contrast, and it's very clear because it is a fundamental right, so this power should be necessary, and I'm very optimistic about it, but we shall see. As for the investigation, we will prioritize it. I cannot share a whole lot about current ongoing investigations, but when I initiated it, I expressed my concern related to this phenomenon and the risks related to fundamental privacy rights, especially the rights of young people. So we have the resources and we will use them to prioritize this investigation. In the process currently, do you think that you have enough means of investigation to arrive at its conclusion? I'm not just talking about concluding the investigation and the penalties, but rather the ability to tackle this issue that's not just present on that platform. Yes, we have our internal resources. Of course, we can always use more, but we understand the current restrictions. We are working with our international partners, so we share our expertise and knowledge, and we use the tools that we have related to the organizations that we're investigating. At the end, if we see that there is a violation and the organization refuses to implement our recommendations, for example, the investigation of ALO and Pornhub, we said that they needed to stop publishing videos without the consent of everyone in those videos. The organizations did not accept our recommendations, and I had to bring them to court. And that takes a lot of time and resources. And in the meantime, our recommendation is not implemented, and Canadians are not protected from these practices. On the spread of deepfakes, currently, do you have recommendations that may allow us to better regulate this phenomenon? In December 2023, I put forward recommendations with my PT counterparts related to AI. And we talked about deepfakes. We talked about that if you use that to manipulate people, if you're using that to create defamatory statements or to spread non-consensual sexual pictures, then that will be a huge issue. Recently, along with the CRTC, the Competition Bureau, and the IP office, we published something related to deepfakes that's related to all of our mandates. In my world, privacy issues are related to manipulating people, as well as the spread of non-consensual sexual content, and use and transparency. We published that in September, and I think that it's a good summary, and it shows that we are collaborating not only with other privacy commissioners in Canada and around the world, but also other digital regulators, such as the CRTC, the Competition Bureau, and others. Thank you, Mr. Thériault. Mr. Hardy, you have 5 minutes. Thank you for being here again. I want to go back on the answer that you provided to Mr. Barrett. You said that you do not have powers to force companies like X to provide information related to their operations. What are the recommendations that you would give the government so that they can act faster to protect people? Well, I have the power during an investigation to ask for information. So when I'm investigating, the act works. What I do not have, it's that if at the end of an investigation I see that the law has been violated, I cannot force someone to stop an illegal practice. For example, you used the example of Pornhub. You said this is what should be done, but it's a recommendation. But you're using a lot of tools. You're doing research, but at your conclusion, they can still do whatever they want. That's what happened. Now, thankfully, a lot of Canadian companies that we deal with accept our recommendations. They talk to us, and then they will move forward with it. But when there is a refusal, that's problematic. And in the case of Pornhub, they turned down 2 recommendations that I think are essential. So first, ensure that there is a clear and direct consent of everybody there. If it's indirect, it can lead to things such as revenge porn. And when information is put there in an inappropriate manner, it needs to be quickly removed, and it needs to be easy for victims to remove that. And the organization still refuses to do so. And that's why I have requested an amendment and to be able to issue orders. People can challenge my decision in front of the courts. That's normal. That's part of the rule of law. However, there needs to be immediate protections for Canadians. So those recommendations were provided to the Canadian government, and you're essentially waiting for them to be enforced. Are there any other recommendations? Because last time you were here, it seems that you said that your office is underfunded, maybe understaffed. Do you feel that there is support? Do you feel that you can reach your objectives? We made very substantial recommendations. For example, a new bill that gives us some powers, and 2, recognizing privacy as a fundamental right, and 3, protecting young people, as well as the protection of the right to remove certain information, as well as the international side. So when data leaves Canada, I think there needs to be more stricter systems. So how many recommendations have been retained? It's been a year since the Carney government. How many recommendations have been retained? I think it will all be in one bill. I'm still waiting. I don't think there will be one bill per recommendation. I think there will be one for the private sector. I think there will be another bill for the public sector. I think that the public sector one will come later. However, I will continue to say that it's necessary to move quickly. So right now, as we speak, the public is no better protected compared to a year ago. Currently, the recommendations have not been implemented yet. I'm using the tools that I have with the best of my capabilities while working with international partners. However, there is an opportunity that needs to be seized by this parliament as quick as possible. Okay, thank you. I now want to talk about AI, identity theft, and the control of information. I know that recently they announced a partnership with the Chinese government that will bring in 50,000 cars. We know that people spend a lot of time in their cars, and in there they will talk about their families. They may even share certain things. And you said that once data leaves the country, we lose control of it. Do you think that there may be a potential danger to Canadians? I think that when it comes to sending data outside of Canada, that's an issue. We cannot completely stop it because international trade is based on that. So we need to find a balance. So protection of privacy, protecting sovereignty, digital sovereignty, national security, while ensuring that free trade can flow. So privacy brings forward things such as consent and transparency. Do we know what's happening? Are we okay with it? Is it easy to say no? Are they used properly? So it's important to look at all that, whether that is in the field of EVs in Canada or around the world, especially when data leaves our borders. Thank you. I think that you will have another opportunity to ask questions. Ms. Lapointe, over to you. You may start. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome to the both of you. Everything is very interesting. When we talk about the government's work related to your recommendations, are you confident that your recommendations will be accepted? The Minister of AI has made public statements saying that there is work underway and that AI needs it. It goes back to what I have said, which is that we need innovation, a strong economy while protecting privacy, and that's possible. Thank you. Earlier, you talked about Great Britain and you compared to the two of our countries. And you talked about 23andMe. You said that you had the same results. Can the British issue penalties? Yes, it's a global genealogy company, and there was a privacy breach. So people were able to steal the data of millions of people, including 300,000 Canadians. So this is genetic data, very sensitive data. So I initiated it with my British counterpart. So we looked at whether the company took proper precautions to protect data. And what we saw is that there weren't sufficient protection systems, bad passwords, and when there were hints that there were bad actors, they did not do enough. We reached the same conclusions. However, my British counterpart had the power to issue orders and to issue fines. I think they issued millions of pounds of fines, and I was only able to make recommendations. It was quite a flagrant situation. We had a press conference, and someone asked me, how is it that I did not impose fines? And I said it was because I did not have the power to do so. So because there were penalties in Great Britain, did that company correct that issue quicker? So what happened is that the company accepted all our recommendations. So when we have the power to issue fines and orders, it pushes the organizations to accept them. If it was just myself, would they have accepted it? Maybe we can be very persuasive. We can publicly criticize these entities and they don't like it. However, when we talk about implementing very expensive measures, if there are no financial consequences, then it's hard to convince management to spend all that money. So, in my view, any manager pays attention to risks, whether that is legal or financial ones. I have another question. Earlier, you talked about the best interests of children and consent. I know that currently there's a trend to not put pictures of your children because usually children who are very young cannot consent to it. So when it comes to all of the pictures published across social media, how do you protect the interest of children? There's also facial recognition. How can we ensure that that does not end badly for children who have not decided to be on social media? That's why protection of the privacy of children has been one of my priorities. They are vulnerable. Often, their data is put online without their consent. So first, we need to interpret the law in a way that takes into account their best interest. It's done in family law and in all other areas of law, but not necessarily in privacy law. For example, saying that the consent of a child needs to be appropriate based on their age and clear. Often, it's their parents who consent, but in other cases, they can do it. Communication needs to be adapted to the age of children. I just created an advisory council in my office for young people. I consult young people and ask them, how do they want to see their privacy protected? How do they use social media? We need to take that into account. There's another round if you would like to ask questions. Now we will go back to Mr. Hardy. And I think he wants to share his time with Mr. Cooper. 5 minutes. I have a simple question. It goes back to what I asked earlier related to the Chinese government. Up until now, China has been identified as one of the most dangerous threats to our country. And now we're opening up trade with them. You work with global partners a little bit around the world, in Australia, the UK. Are you comfortable in collaborating with China? Is there open collaboration? Do you have contacts? Do you feel like we can work with them? Do you think that data will be properly handled in the same manner as your counterparts in the UK and Australia and maybe even the USA? Canada is very active on the international scene. There are a lot of networks related to privacy. I talk about the G7. There is also the Asia-Pacific network, so we're working closely with Japan and Korea and Singapore. There are also commissioners in Hong Kong that we work with. We have positive interactions with them. And we like what we see as privacy commissioners. Now, I have not necessarily interacted with the Chinese government when it comes to privacy protections. And what we want to see is a common voice, a strong common voice. And that allows us to issue many statements. Now, when it came to our investigation on TikTok, we had concerns because the Chinese government has strong powers to obtain information from private companies. And we wanted TikTok to say that it is possible that data be sent to China. Was it okay that China accept? TikTok accepted to modify certain things. You have 3 minutes.
Government's cyber security bill, in addition to not requiring judicial authorization before the minister can order a telecommunications service provider to turn over metadata, subscriber account information, website visits, the location of financial data, and other personal data. The bill, as you noted, and those powers do not require that it be necessary and proportionate, that the current standard is a relevance one of relevancy, correct?
Correct for one of the powers. There's a number of powers in the bill.
I'm talking about under 15, paragraph 15. Okay. And can you, so that is a pretty permissive standard.
It's much more permissive than necessity and proportionality, which is why I've recommended that it be changed to that.
Yeah, so no judicial authorization and no necessary and proportionate standard. We're talking about some pretty significant information and data concerning the privacy of Canadians. One of the, I would characterize it as excuses that the government has put forward when privacy concerns have been raised with regards to this bill is that they have said, well, there's a lower expectation of privacy with respect to engaging in a regulated activity. And that's true. There is a lesser expectation or reasonable expectation of privacy. But I just want to confirm that when it comes to the Internet, that is not a regulated activity, is it? In fact, it engages significant privacy expectations.
Well, in this case, I have not called for there to be a warrant or a judicial authorization, but I have called and I am calling for a stronger threshold, which should be, in my view, necessity and proportionality.
Right, but I'm also just saying that this is an activity, the use of the Internet, metadata, all of these things based upon judgments of the Supreme Court engage significant privacy expectations. That's a fair statement, isn't it?
Well, I think it's enough to warrant necessity and proportionality as the standard, so that you assess: do you need it? How much do you need? Don't get more than what you need, but also have you looked for less privacy impacting mechanisms?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooper. Madame Lapointe, et je comprends que tu veux.
Ms. Lapointe, and I think you want to share your time. Thank you. Quickly, C-16 was tabled in the House. The law amended certain measures related to gender-based violence, but also covers deepfakes and non-consensual images that are shared. Are you aware of it? Have you taken a look at it? Yes, I'm aware. Now, we are in the world of the criminal code. And for me, the Privacy Act and PIPEDA still play important roles. Not everything falls under the criminal code. But as in the case of ALO, I think that we can also use non-criminal laws to protect Canadians. So I have a quick second question. A lot of witnesses were alarmist and said that superintelligent AI will bring about the end of the world. You met other representatives of the G7 who are commissioners like you. Are they just as alarmist across the world? People compare this to climate change or nuclear war. When I attend international events, including the G7, there are all kinds of discussions. When it comes to privacy, my privacy colleagues, we focus on the issue in front of us and the upcoming future, so AI agents. But we hear these concerns at the G7. At the G7, we invited Yoshua Bengio to come talk about his concerns. I believe that these exchanges are very important, but it's not unanimous. Not everybody thinks that's where we're headed. The message that we hear, it's what to do to protect ourselves now. And I think that improving privacy, having elements such as human control and consent are all things that will lead to that evolution be less likely. You have 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the right to connectivity is fundamental. I really care about this issue. And I've been lately looking at this. I'm also thinking about the concentration of cognitive power. Unfortunately, that's not just on knowledge itself, but rather also on creation. So, creation of knowledge. What worries me, it's not just this stronger growth of it, of this concentration. It's also that it's concentrated in the hands of a few actors and not equally spread. When people say universal, it's not necessarily across the world and internationally. It's in the hands of a few players. As commissioner, and us as legislators, what is the current framework that we have? And what path should we take so that at the least we understand the problem and understand what do we need to do to ensure that personal data is protected and to ensure that everything else is properly protected. I think we need to use all the tools that we have. In my case, we need to work with other fields, so privacy, but also cognitive psychology. That's very important. Understand how decisions are made. Understand why decisions are not made. Understand how people can be manipulated by algorithms, by messages, and AI. So ensuring that humans have a role in all this. From the legislative perspective, I made recommendations related to more transparency and the protection of private life. So human dignity from day one. As for the small number of players, I believe that requires international collaboration at the government and parliamentary level and at the regulatory level. It will be very hard for one country to regulate it because this is transnational. But having the international community work together is a solution, and that's what we're doing. Thank you, Mr. Sari.
Mr. Dufresne, on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you for being before us, and I am certainly confident in how you handle your file and your staff as well. You bring that confidence to a great degree before this committee, so I want to thank you today for your testimony. Okay? A couple of things I need to quickly discuss with the committee. There are two pressing issues that we need to move on. The first one is I need concurrence in the House on the Conflict of Interest Act. We are expecting that the draft report on our study will be landing on our desk at some point soon, so I need to move on that. We haven't got concurrence to ensure that this committee can present the report eventually to the House. And the second one I need concurrence on is on the Lobbying Act and the upcoming study for that. So I'm going to deal with that on Thursday. Okay, so I'm going to get motions from the committee on both those issues so that we can move concurrence in the House and make sure that this committee is the appropriate venue that the House agrees that we are to study both. Okay, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I have no other business, and we've got the AI minister coming on Thursday. There was a motion that he come for 2 hours. He's only coming for 1. We have tried significantly to get him here for 2, but he is committed to 1 hour with officials following in that second hour. So I just want to make the committee aware of the efforts that the clerk has put in to try to get the minister here for 2 hours as per the committee request in the motion that was passed unanimously. So that's it. Enjoy the day. Meeting's adjourned.